The film opens in a way that already feels wrong. Sun-bleached countryside, empty lanes, a sense of distance, the kind of place that could swallow sound and spit it back hollow. Two travelers arrive, young, restless, hitching westward for reasons that could be freedom or avoidance. They're an ordinary couple, the sort you meet at filling stations, jokes, cigarettes, a small argument about whether to stop or keep driving. Their car rolls past hedgerows, past a cluster of houses that lean in toward one another as if gossiping. The camera lingers on a closed pub, a churchyard, a farm machinery bit rusting at the lane's edge. Nobody waves. Something small is already wrong. They stop because of the weather or because of curiosity. Down the road, a local man waves them toward a farmhouse where something odd is happening. A machine, recently delivered, being prepared in a field. It's an agricultural device meant to speed growth, to pulverize soil, to make crops leaner, greener, richer. This is the era's promise. Technology will save the harvest. But here, the machine hums and breathes in a way that doesn't belong. There is a weird light about it, a metallic drone that seeps into coats and pockets and makes dogs uneasy. They meet locals, strangers with the same wary smiles. A man with weathered hands who runs the farm, his wife who looks exhausted, a few policemen who ask more questions than they answer. Someone mentions a recent morbid oddity, a body upturned near the hedgerow. The parish has solved it as a stray accident. The travelers assume small-town tragedies get small-town explanations. They don't know yet how wrong those reassurances are. The heart of the early story is the machine. It isn't sinister at first. It's impressive. Turbines, cables, an operator's panel with dials and blinking bulbs. Scientists and industry men talk about yields and quotas and the future of farming. They talk in clean suits. The machine's purpose, the film makes clear in patient detail, is efficient agriculture. But its effect is acoustic and chemical, something that stirs the earth in ways nobody predicted. And then animals behave oddly. A dog finds no interest in food. Chickens cluster like a living knot and then scatter in panic. Cattle press against fence posts and moo without rhythm. The young travelers, let's call them the pair who stop to help, witness at first a dead rabbit twitching with the wrong kind of life. It's small and grotesque and easy to dismiss until more happens. Bodies long buried, graves quiet for years, start surfacing. The first is accidental, a heavy rain, a shallow grave eroding, and a hand, a muddy, clawing hand pushing through the topsoil. The villagers treat it like a nightmare made flesh. At the vicar's, a pallid man insists on washed hands and prayers. The police try to keep order. People gossip about grave robbers, about kids playing tricks, and then a child disappears. The film takes its time showing how disbelief softens into dread. There are little storms of denial, people boarding windows, patching locks, locking up the pub, and then the larger, louder demonstrations of fear when the first reanimated corpse comes searching for warmth and bite. The movie is not in a hurry to show gore. It shows the slow realization the dead are not staying dead, and how that knowledge evolves from a rumor into an unavoidable fact. Once disbelief dissolves, the town's fragile social fabric tears. A handful of protagonists, the young couple, a stoic policeman weary of paperwork, a local farmer whose fields are the source of the machine, and a scientist who helped design the device, become the point of view anchors. The film follows them as the situation tightens like a noose. The infected are different from the usual shambling masses in other zombie films. These rising dead carry a damp agricultural smell. They drag soil in clumps. Their mouths work like beasts learning speech. Their hands claw as if remembering how to hold pitchforks. There's a slow, angry intelligence in them at times, occasional flashes of the lives they once had, husbands returning to empty beds, former workers seeking the places they used to stand. The film uses this to make the horror feel more intimate. These aren't faceless monsters, they're neighbors and fathers coming back wrong. Tactics form, boards nailed to doors, campers rolling out from yards with crossbows and makeshift torches, radio messages broadcast from a village hall that becomes command central. The weather fights the survivors. A fog rolls in one night like a curtain, thick enough that a man hears only the snap of twigs and the click of distant teeth. Birds stop calling, dogs howl and then fall quiet. The protagonists start to tally the missing, moving through lists as people used to list harvest goals. The police try to coordinate with outside authorities, but communications fail. Lines cut, radio static, a satellite dish smashed by a frantic mob. When the machine is mentioned, men in suits show up briefly and then leave, like bureaucrats who know the legal cost of telling the truth. The scientist who helped build the device is conflicted, and then resigned his invention has awakened a biological reaction in the burials. In the peat and worm cast of the fields, something that reoxygenates old tissues and wakes buried nervous structures into flickers of life. It is all delivered in a science as horror tone that never banishes the human cost, a formula with no remedy. Once the infection becomes undeniable, order disintegrates in a particular way. People don't simply die, they come back and become the vectors for more death. A pattern emerges, a bite here, a fever there, then a slipping away to the cold earth. Attempts to burn the bodies only scatter the spores. Attempts to quarantine an area simply corral an angry, hungry herd. There's a dread of containment because containment becomes concentration. The film's camera moves with this panic, tracking shots down lanes, abrupt cuts to empty kitchens, the flutter of a child's shoe left by an unmade bed. Survivors adopt cruel improvisations. They chain doors and windows, they drive tractors through hedges to form ramming barricades, they tie bells to gates to hear when someone approaches. At one point, a farmhouse is defended like a citadel, its families all doubled in behind doors, and the camera watches as food runs low and tempers flare. A subplot involves a group attempting to reach the radio transmitter on a hill, an effort to call for help, and the sequence becomes a classic siege. Desperate sprinting through fields under strobe-like lightning, a terrified crossing of small bridges, a loved one lost to the earth's sudden grasp. The machine at the field becomes the obvious locus of evil. The townsfolk organize a plan to pull it down to destroy the mechanism that made the soil sing. They are unsuccessful, or at best, temporarily successful. It's heavy, it's anchored, and its humming dials are not simply metal. They are also a metaphor for a world that wanted faster yields and now pays the bill. The machine's destruction when it finally comes is cinematic. A tractor winch snaps, cables bite, a scaffold collapses, and the device burns in a ragged, oily flare. For a moment, the wind carries the smoke away like a benediction. For a moment, the living think the world will be tolerable again. But the lesson is cruel. The earth was roused. You cannot so easily put it back to sleep. The dead have tasted sun, wind, and blood, and they will not go quietly. In the final portions, the film focuses on the very human consequences. There are losses that the movie lets sit on the screen and coagulate. The couple who arrived at the start are not heroes in the conventional sense. They are witnesses and survivors who learn, sometimes too late, how moral choices weigh against survival. A former lover becomes an antagonist by refusing to leave the town, stubborn and self-destructive. An elder, once the village's moral backbone, does something small and brutal to avoid infection, and the camera travels up a face that will never smile the same way again. There is no tidy rescue. The outside world is both alarmed and impotent. Evacuation is partial, help is slow, and news cycles move on as social media would had this been the modern age. The ending is resolutely ambiguous. Some people make it to the coast and escape by ferry, carrying stories and a few burns on their hands. Others are left behind, their roofs blackened by burning crosses and their fields plowed under by grieving tractors. The film gives us a final shot of the land, the plowed soil, the smoking furrows, and the thought that even if you burn the machine, the act of making the ground sing has consequences. Seed banks, bones, and centuries of buried life are not reset by flame. The last frames are quiet and unforgiving. A single pair of footsteps in mud that will not be easily erased. A camera lift that shows rows of open graves, the shallow kind made in a hurry, and then the horizon. The countryside is still beautiful, but with a bruise that will not heal. Let Sleeping Corpses Lie succeeds because it blends ecological anxiety with folk horror and the slow, inexorable dread of the undead. It is not about the spectacle of blood alone. It is about responsibility and small-town denial, the temptation to trade long-term safety for short-term profit, and how quickly that bargain comes due. The film is patient with its scare. It lets the viewer turn over every image, the hum of the machine, the slick earth, the quiet farms, until the ordinary becomes uncanny. There's also a moral texture to the survivors' choices. Some characters become cruel, some become sacrificial, some find strange heroism in stubbornness. The film refuses a neat moral closure. It's a meditation on how an industrial decision rippled out through lives in ways the people who made the choice never imagined. When the credits approach, you carry with you an image that's both pastoral and menacing. Fields under sunset, a tractor abandoned in mud, the slow, inevitable rise of something that was buried long ago. The movie's title is not merely a warning about corpses, it is a proverb. Sleeping things can be left in peace until a hand or a machine disturbs them. Once disturbed, they are no longer for us to command. Let Sleeping Corpses Lie is a thriller about the thin line between human convenience and catastrophe. It's also, quietly, a warning. The scars we make on the land often come back to mark us. The film doesn't scream its message at you. It lets the countryside do that work by silence and by the low, terrifying sound of the earth beginning to remember.